How's everybody doing?
Great.
That was really pathetic, you guys. How's everybody doing? All right. I know it's early and people were probably out later than they should have been. Our team was one of those teams. So thank you for joining us and being a part of today. We, after talking with Jordan, friend of Grit Daily, he graciously told us we had an opportunity to do an event here. And we said, well, we've always wanted to put together our own event that really focused on the intersection of Web3 and social impact and the importance of community-owned projects like wallets and activism and climate action and all the things that we really care about as entrepreneurs and activists ourselves. So we're very happy to be here. This is our first event. Hopefully you'll be able to stay here or come and go throughout the day. And we're really here because our client Thesis made it possible for us. Michael Haley is the head of product ops at Thesis. We still don't know what the ops means though, right?
We never will.
We never will. He came here from Brooklyn to be with us today. And yeah, he has a pretty extensive background in crypto and blockchain. Before we get into some of what Thesis does, I'd love you to share some of how you got started in crypto. What year was it? And why did you decide to move in that direction with your career?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us so bright and early. So yeah, I think my rabbit hole journey began in 2014, I think. So I, in a previous life, dropped out of grad school. I was in the humanities, so I was interested in embodiment and tech and the anthropology of money. And a friend of mine from college who had used Bitcoin on the dark web was the person who, I mean, basically to buy drugs, right? Introduced me to Bitcoin. And it was just inherently really fascinating for me. I thought like, oh, the way money is the way it always will be. It's kind of alienating, but that ship has sailed. And so the idea that that money could be sort of like qualitatively different was mind-blowing. So 2014, 2015 was like the early Ethereum days, also pre-launch, pre-consensus. And yeah, it was like a special time in New York where there was like the sort of proto-burner social scene in early Ethereum where, oh my God.
Okay. All right. Wait, so can we back up for a second? You said proto-burner social scene?
Yeah, totally.
Could you unpack that a little bit, what that means?
Yeah, so I think like the, really smartly, some of the maybe we shouldn't talk about this. Yeah, I think a lot of the early Ethereum folks in New York were also like going to fun, cool parties. And I think they created an environment that was really exciting to be an engineer in, right? Yeah. So you're like, oh, I can like work on Hyperledger and IBM, or I can, and go to Midtown, or you can be an engineer for Ethereum and go to some, all-night party in Berlin, right? So it's like it made the...
It kind of brought in, it was creating a different kind of culture.
Totally.
In tech.
A different kind of cult and a different kind of culture, for sure. But yeah, so I kind of got pilled 2014, 2015, worked in like the B2B SaaS space for 3 years, selling exchange tech to crypto exchanges. That team scaled to like 140 people. Then I moved to a company called Casa. That's a self-custody startup in Bitcoin. And then 6 months ago, I moved to Thesis.
So 6 months ago, you moved to Thesis. And Thesis is a crypto venture production studio. I think a lot of people here are familiar with the startup ecosystem. So a lot of people are familiar with the crypto venture studio. But would you break that down just in case there's anybody in here who doesn't quite understand the model of what venture studio is?
Yeah, so I think we're going to see more and more venture studios, just in general in crypto and then outside of crypto. So venture studio, basically, it's kind of like a mix between a startup incubator and a VC firm. So basically, a Thesis, like we have some capital, we have investment from different VCs, and what we do is we basically like found and launch products and new companies, new projects, and so. We'll found a company. We're starting Tally now, which is kind of not a company. It's kind of its own thing. But we'll kick it off. Then we'll bring in outside investors. We'll bring in people to run it. And then we'll kind of kick it out of the nest, hope it does well, and then move on to the next one. So I think we're going to see more of this just because like the average life cycle of companies is just getting faster and faster. And then also people generally don't want to move out of operation and into just investing, right? They kind of want to like do a little bit of both. And also just the line between like what a fund is and what a project is or a product in crypto is like inherently totally blurred anyway. Yeah. So we're kind of...
Especially with DAOs,
yes,
right?
Especially with DAOs.
With DAOs.
Yes.
And do you know a lot about DAOs?
I know some.
You know some about DAOs. So one of the reasons that I wanted to work with Thesis was because of, not the weather, it was because of the company's mission to put control and power back in the hands of individuals and communities versus institutions, basically. And with that, you've recently been, well, you haven't fully launched it yet, right? You're about to launch.
We're launching soon.
You're launching
TM.
soon a community-owned wallet, which will be Thesis's answer to MetaMask, right? Does anybody here use MetaMask? Okay, so would you explain what Thesis is, or what Tally is in relation to that?
Totally, yeah. Well, we're kind of Tally, or the full name is like Tally Ho. So Tally Ho, it's like a fox hunting cry, like Tally Ho. It's like a British, old-timey British thing. So yeah, it's like
I don't think anybody knew that. Did anybody know that? I had no
awesome,
idea.
right?
That was a great piece of trivia.
Yeah. So the guys would be on their horse, like, Tally Ho, and they'd go into the forest and get the fox, right? So yeah, basically MetaMask was started in 2016. I think it's like one of the foundational apps that kind of got us here. So like hats off to that team. But is it Web3 native?
What does it mean to be Web3 native?
Generally, it means it is community owned. And it is not. It's not community owned. So MetaMask is kind of like the crown jewel of Consensus. Consensus did a lot for the ecosystem, still does a lot. But basically, yeah, it's like a Web 2 company. So MetaMask moved off of open source last August. So it's no longer 100% open source. They also make about $500K to $1 million in revenue a day through their swaps feature. None of that goes to users. So the thesis with Tally Ho is, okay, this is actually really good revenue for a DAO. This is something a lot of people use, similar to what LooksRare is doing kind of with mixed success, I would say, with OpenSea. Maybe we can do a vampire attack on MetaMask, basically. So we do a fair launch. We incentivize users to move from MetaMask to Tally Ho. We build a DAO that owns MetaMask. So Thesis is, or that owns Tally Ho. Thesis is not going to own it. We may get some allocation, but there's no pre-allocation, and it's up to the DAO whether or not we get anything. So we've been working on this for a year. We might get nothing, but that's the kind of gamble we're making. Yeah, and hopefully we have a DAO that has $1 million in revenue a day, which is amazing for a DAO.
That's incredible. That brings me back to just questions around your business model at Thesis when you're building these products, because you genuinely want to build products that are native Web3, that they're community owned. But then how much more of a risk is that for you and your team to be building products where you might not, the DAO might vote on you not getting anything? Is this a consistent theme running through all the products that you're building?
Yeah, I'd say like with Tally, we're going more to the extreme. So we have a few portfolio companies. One is Fold. That's like, it's a Web 2 business, but that's okay. They're cool, you know, and it's in Bitcoin. So
tell everybody what Fold is,
Fold
because
is like
it's an amazing app and you should all download it.
Yeah, it's a Bitcoin rewards app. So like you can use, you know, they have a debit card. You can use it in the real world. You get Bitcoin back. It's gamified a little bit. So
you get to spin a wheel, and then you get Satoshis. You get little sats.
Yes. Yeah. Fold, they did an awesome job.
And you can do it every day.
You should do it every day. Yeah. So, and then we have two other DeFi projects, Keep, which is now merged with New Cipher. It is called Threshold Network. And then also Saddle, which is very similar to Curve. If anyone's used that, it's an AMM. So Tally, I'd say like we're going to more of a extreme. There were allocations for the teams for these other projects. With Tally, it's definitely more of a Hail Mary. It's definitely more of a YOLO.
Why did you and your team decide to go to more of an extreme to put yourselves in that position? Is it just, does it have anything to do with seeing projects out there that are calling themselves Web3, but they're really functioning as Web2, and you wanted to take a stand?
Yeah, I think that's some of it. I think like we're also like we have capital. Like there's no point in doing any of this if we're not taking shots on goal. We don't want to miss with Tally Ho, but you know we still have some funding. But the idea is, yeah, this is something that we all just believed in. And also I think to have any credibility against MetaMask, you have to go to the far end. You can't half-ass it.
Yeah, definitely. Is anybody in here part of a DAO or running a DAO, creating a DAO? Part of just a few people. Okay, we've got the DAO panel raising their hands.
Anyone else?
Is anybody interested in participating in a DAO or understanding it more? Great, great. So it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, but I have a feeling you'll be able to give a much better definition and describe some of the important best practices to keep in mind when building and running a DAO.
Yes. So yeah, the term DAO, as far as I know, was first used in 2014 in an essay by Vitalik. It's closely related to this idea of a DAC, or a decentralized autonomous corporation, but a DAO is kind of more of a nonprofit, theoretically. But yeah, a DAO is something that I think the way I think of it is that you have kind of automation or robots in the middle, and then you have like humans around it. So you kind of have some kind of app or service or treasury that operates in like kind of an unstoppable way, but it has this ring of like human beings that are incentivized to kind of like keep it going and keep it rolling. So yeah, I mean, DAOs are really, I don't know, they're very popular now. But what's interesting is like DAOs were kind of like the vision of Ethereum before NFTs, before DEXs, before Uniswap, before anyone was even really talking about tokens. It was all smart contracts or DAOs. So it's been like really refreshing, exciting to finally see that happening. We had some false starts years ago, but now they're happening for real. I think I would like the thing I would say is like we use the term maybe more imprecisely now, but we probably have a mix of DAOs and also DAOs. DAOs would be like a decentralized organization. I think if you don't have a treasury and there's not some kind of automation in the middle, it's not totally a DAO, but like that's fine. That doesn't matter. I think the thing to look for with DAOs is like who actually owns it, and I mean who owns the tokens, and then like what voice do they actually have in the thing that they're supposed to be governing. Is it like a vanity token? There's another wallet project that I like, but you're basically just getting like a random token that says you're a supporter. So like what does that actually mean? So like are you actually making decisions? Are you seeing actual upside? Is there real ownership? I think that's kind of the big thing for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. You just used a term decentralized organization. So I saw an argument recently on Twitter, of course, and it was someone.
No way.
I don't remember who it was, and if it was, I probably wouldn't say names right now, but they were basically stating that the only way an organization can be truly decentralized is if there's no CEO, is if there's no executive team, or that kind of structure. How would you define an actual truly decentralized organization? Does it have to be a DAO, or can it be a DO, like you said?
I think it can be anything. And what does decentralized really mean? Because like
the term's been watered down a lot, I think, over the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, well, it's I mean, it has. There's no way to argue it, right? Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on like who owns the tokens. I think we're seeing some of this with, to some extent, with ENS, right? So the director of ops for ENS, some tweets were surfaced from 2016 that were pretty homophobic, among other things. And there's an immediate vote like, let's get this guy out. We don't want him in our project. We don't like this. We appreciate what he did, but this isn't what this community is about. Let's get him out. That vote failed in part because he had a lot of tokens. If everyone else had voted for him out, he would have been out, but he had a lot of weight. So, you know, I don't have a full answer here. I think like if a company has a CEO that is a little awkward, like MakerDAO is supposed to be totally decentralized, but then you're like, okay, well, what did Andreessen invest in, right? In like 2018, they are decentralizing. I think if you have a CEO long term, I think it's something that we probably won't see. Like Matt is Thesis' CEO, but he's not Tally Ho's CEO. I don't know that we're gonna have that. For what it's worth, I think probably like the project lead for Tally Ho is gonna be the community lead. So I don't know. I think actually a lot of these like Web 2 growth startup roles we're going to see be something different, right? Like I'm a product person, but like our joke is that like product managers are the new politicians, right? For better or worse, right? Like we basically have to operate on influence. But I think also like with Web 3, theoretically, you don't have a setup where you're just like spying on users. Like it's a predatory relationship basically between product managers and users historically, right? Like there's a huge data asymmetry. You're trying to get them to do things. You have data on them. They don't have data on you. I think when like all that data is out there, you're not going to be just doing telemetry on users. Like you're going to ultimately be trying to serve them, theoretically, we hope. But you also, there's still going to be soft power in the form of incentives.
When you just said you have data on them and they have data on you, I was thinking that term, I have dirt on you, you have dirt on someone, and now the new phrase is I have data on you, basically, if you have power over somebody, right?
Yeah, well, that's why I was talking with Zuko from Zcash at ETH Denver, and basically, like, if you have data over someone else, and if that person doesn't have privacy with respect to you, like, that person basically totally controls you, right? A, because they have dirt on you and they can reveal it later, but then also they're going to have this crazy storehouse of just information about what you do with your browser, what you do when you're on Facebook, and they can use that to influence you. And we're all being influenced all the time. It's really creepy. That's why if you like look at certain things on Instagram, it's a funny game you can play. You can look at certain types of things on Instagram and then hit search, and like what's going to display is going to be totally different. So we're all subject to influence all the time. But yeah, maybe Web3 can fix that.
Yeah. So maybe Web3 can fix it. So you already mentioned that to be truly native Web3, you need to be community owned. What are some other aspects of a genuine Web3 organization?
Yeah, so I would say community ownership and community like decision making are kind of like the two big ones. The only other one I would add is like your identity should belong to you. It should be like a public-private key pair that you control, that you're not relying on someone else to custody, right? You have kind of this self-custody identity. So people in Bitcoiners, right, they say like not your keys, not your coin. It's kind of like not your keys, not your identity. So the idea that like you fully own your identity, you could bring it to different apps and services. You're not depending on the platform to hold it for you. That's super important. Then this element of community ownership or decision making via tokens, that's also super important. I think the impact of that is basically you have a portable identity. You can take different places. You're not dependent on any platform. You actually can't be deplatformed. And theoretically, the service should never go down. Ethereum should never go down. Solana sometimes goes down. But a blockchain shouldn't go down. So I would say persistence, permissionlessness, use your own data, shared wealth decision making. Those are kind of
open source.
Open source, of course. Yes. I thought that went without saying. I wish it did.
Yeah, so the open source conversation is interesting in the NFT space, and I would love your thoughts about that if you've been following that at all. There are some projects that are very open with giving their IP to their community of NFT holders. There are some that don't want to share that. They don't want to give away that kind of secret sauce, or I guess it's not really a secret, it's out there, but they don't want to give anybody rights to it. Is there any kind of parallel between open source and Web3 projects making their IP available for its community?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's kind of like taking us back into sort of like DMCA convos. Like I think, I think if you have the NFT, you should have the IP. In my opinion, I could maybe be persuaded otherwise for certain projects, but I'm actually not the biggest. I'm probably many folks here know more about NFTs than I do. I'm still a bit of a noob. I'm more of like a DeFi kind of person. But I think there is a parallel, and it's basically like, can you own the thing and can you remix the thing, right? And if you don't have the IP, you're a little bit constrained to do that. And it's kind of like, okay, what did I buy really? Except maybe something I can sell again. But yeah, I think with open source, the things that are really important is just that like you can remix it and you can do what you want with it. And if you don't have the IP on an NFT, maybe it's a little bit harder to do that.
Yeah. And then, so with some Thesis products, and correct me if I'm wrong, are some of the users able to take like your code if it's open source and just basically make it better?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we're announcing our sign in with Ethereum feature, which is awesome, which is super important. And I think actually So it's like you can sign in with Google, you can sign in with Facebook. Pretty soon you'll be able to sign in with Ethereum, which is just awesome. You're actually going to be able to log into Discourse pretty soon with Ethereum instead of having to use like your Discord username or whatever. So yeah, so that was actually something that a community member made. And so I think a lot of our features are going to be things that like our core dev team doesn't even make, that other people make. So yeah, anything that's open source, anyone can kind of do whatever they want with it. We're using like a really hardcore license, which is the new like basically GPL v3, which basically means awesome, do whatever you want with Tally, but then that code also has to be open source. You can't copy Tally's code and then use it for a closed source project. It's a little more to it than that, but it's kind of like an open source poison pill, right? Like it's a smart mechanism. So yeah, I mean, anything that's open source, people should do that. Again, MetaMask, you actually can see most of their code online. The issue is basically like in 2020, Brave forked a bunch of MetaMask code and used it to, as far as we know, create the Brave wallet that's like right in their browser. So I understand why MetaMask did it, but it's super unfortunate. I mean, they got Ethereum Foundation funding. They got tons of grants on Gitcoin over the years, which is like kind of the vanguard for open source in the space, and we'll see.
And people can download Tally now?
Yes.
If they go to the App Store, can they download Tally?
No, so we're only for the Chrome Web Store and for Firefox. But yeah, if you go to tally.cash, you can download it. It's early, guys. We get code out as soon as we can for people to dog food. But it's good. I encourage everyone to try swaps. That'll put you in a good place for when things come later on.
Swaps. This is part of it?
Swaps, yeah. So basically, like, you can swap tokens inside the app. Similar to MetaMask, half the fees, but all the funds go to our community Multi-Sig. So it's basically different moderators, the people that have been on our Discord for a while. They are key holders on a Multi-Sig, so Thesis doesn't even see any of it. We launched it a couple weeks ago. I think we're about $250,000 in volume so far. So far so good, but yeah.
Fantastic. I know we started a little late, but do we have any time for questions, Jordan? Maybe like 1 or 2 questions? Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Michael?
Oh yeah, vampire attack. Yes. So vampire attack, that's like one of my favorite terms of art. So the term comes back to, there's a project called Sushi Swap. So Uniswap, if people use Uniswap, it's like kind of the most awesome, yeah, DApp on Ethereum. Basically, you can swap any token for any other token, essentially. And so Uniswap did not have a token. This was in 2020. And another project came along called Sushi Swap, and they said, okay, you're providing liquidity to Uniswap. If you switch over and provide liquidity to us instead, like we basically copied all their code, we're going to give you a token. And so basically so it's called a vampire attack because you're kind of sucking the lifeblood out of another project or sucking the liquidity out of another project. And so Uniswap did this, SushiSwap did this to Uniswap in 2020. I think like the total TVL, total value locked in Uniswap, was about $2 billion at the time. It went down to 500 million. And things looked really good for SushiSwap, but they didn't create any kind of community. They had these kind of mercenary token holders. There's a very like kind of strange story around it. But basically, they got all this capital overnight. But then if you look at it now, like I think SushiSwap has like 1/12 the volume of Uniswap. There's another project called LooksRare that's doing a vampire attack right now on OpenSea, which is cool. I think they did a really good job. They have similar volume in terms of like millions of dollars a day that they do, but they have like 1/60th the number of users. So with vampire attacks, we've seen them be pretty successful, like moving capital over, but maybe not necessarily creating community or doing a good job creating something that lasts. You know, we'll see with LooksRare. I still like sushi, but we'll see. So that's something that we've been like really focused on with Tally Ho. It's like, okay, we have to create a community. We're not even actually really creating a wallet. We're trying to create a community first. That is a great question. It's like my favorite term.
Any other questions? Anybody? Yes, Mark.
So in Web3 in the world of crypto, what are some legitimate reasons for a company to take their source code closed? Like, are there any legitimate reasons?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my previous company, which for folks in Bitcoin would know, but in Web3 wouldn't, was Casa, and we were closed source. And we got so much shit for this. But frankly, we felt like it was just going to put our customers at risk, right? And so this is something I've seen other wallets do too, where it's like, okay, we're closed source. Users could still prove to themselves pretty easily that we didn't have custody over their funds. But so why didn't we do it? Well, basically, we'd just be giving an attacker a blueprint to blow up our APIs and possibly leak user data. A lot of our customers had like an extraordinary amount of Bitcoin. And so like if any PII or anything else got out, it could be frankly kind of dangerous for them. But this is something we really went back and forth about. I would say security is kind of the only one. But I'll say I understand why MetaMask kind of did what it did. You're just like, you know, they got took by Brave, you know. But yeah, I don't know that I see that legitimate, but I would say security is kind of the only one. Or potentially user privacy, but it's still something I don't feel great about.
Any other questions? I feel like did you have a question? No? You just okay, well, thank you. Yes, Gina.
How on earth do you pick the community members to be on the multi-sig wallet?
Yeah, so ideally we would have done like elections, but basically we did kind of an open, you know, it could have been more formal, to be honest, where we kind of did an open call, and some of the people that had been in the community for a while, we had like an OG tag in our Discord. We're like, who wants to do this? The people that were the most dedicated kind of raised their hand. I think it kind of self-selects also, like there is some work involved. So people who were already the most dedicated just kind of volunteered. But yeah, ideally we would have done a vote. We did kind of like an informal, hey, who wants to do this? Made a private Discord room, got them set up, and yeah, we're just kind of using it as a stopgap though until the DAO starts. So we didn't feel like we had to be too crazy about this.
How many are there?
There are 5 total. So it's a 3 or 5 multi-sig. Yeah, so theoretically the 3 of them could collude, but they're only going to get like $1,000 so far because the fees are pretty low. That's a good question. Oh yeah, and so a multi-sig, multi-sig is like multiple. It stands for like multiple signatures, basically. So a multi-sig wallet, we say it's 3 of 5, where there are 5 total keys. There are 5 total people that control the wallet, and you need 3 keys to move funds. So basically, it's a security measure. We could have a one-of-one multi-sig where it's basically a wallet that one person owns, but then what if that person loses the wallet or is evil? You know.
Like a vampire.
Exactly. Yes, but vampires can be good too.
Yeah.
They're chaotic neutral.
All right, we don't have any more time, so please give a hand for Michael.
Thanks, everyone.
And check out tally.cash if you're interested in a community-owned wallet and you're interested in joining a DAO. And how much longer are you going to be here today? A couple hours?
Couple hours.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll be around. I'll be having
Yes.
sparkly water.
If you have any more Web 2 to Web 3 questions for Michael, please see him.